Good afternoon. Tony Dottino, president of Dottino Consulting Group and founder of the USA Memory Championship. And I'm here this afternoon to start to respond to some of the specific requests we're getting. And one of them is a little bit more detail in these broadcasts on how would you use the Roman room and different ways of applying it to real life. And some of the things that we're finding that are a lot of fun is we've got some parents that are beginning to do and use the Roman room at dinner time, at the dinner table, and they're using it with the family, with the kids, and doing it in different ways that are just, I'm laughing when I'm listening to it and hearing what they're doing. So big picture here is how we're going to have some fun using one of the memory techniques and bringing skills to the table on an ongoing basis. So that's what I want to do here today. And I want you to walk away with what I call an aha. The aha is anyone can do this. Anyone is able to improve these skills. They're fun, they're simple, and anyone can share these with their family and have the family laughing at a dinner table, either during meals, after meals, and really enjoying a whole different way of learning and bringing it to real life. And to that regard, what I'd like you to be able to do is actually do this. So I want you to plug into it and actually try this. We're going to start small. So some of our lessons are, how do we begin this and how do we start small? And then what I want you to be able to do is see what the big picture of this is in terms of what it can do in your family life. Well, how different can this be in making the whole family go into a learning experience that can just be a whole exciting, fun way of doing it. And then I want to close off by, I'm going to give you an assignment. And I want you to begin this assignment within the next week. So we're not going to make this overburdening on you, but we're going to do this. And you can owe this lesson to one of my broadcasts that my expert on Chess Club Media, Michael Jorgensen, caught one of these broadcasts and said, you know what, this is the way of bringing a little bit more detail to your audience and having some fun. So we're going to be talking about the Roman room, and I'm going to use myself as the first example of what a Roman room is. So when we think of a Roman room, you want to be thinking about a room in your house or a residence of where you live, where you can literally close your eyes and walk around the walls of the room and literally see objects that are on the walls, or as you walk around in a clockwise position, these objects will be firmly implanted in your mind. And one of the things that I do when I'm sitting at this bookcase and doing these broadcasts in this residence of where I am right now is I look around the room and I'm sitting at what I call in a 6 o'clock position. So I'm sitting at 6 o'clock on our clock, and we're going to go clockwise. So what I do is I start with, in terms of looking at the room, I start looking at what becomes 12 o'clock. So I'm going straight across the room, and I'm looking at a door. And in that door, I'm thinking if that's my opening. So what do I want to say when I look at the door? As you might see me glance sometimes away from the screen, I look at the door and I say, okay, what do I want to say in my opening remarks? And might I want to peel back something from a prior broadcast? Again, I've gotten some really great coaching from Michael Jorgensen. And so I pick up some of the thoughts from an opening or a prior broadcast, and I use that as my opening. Then I see the door opened. Now I open the door, and what do I want to talk about today? And I'll hold up a magazine article. I'll hold up one of the books off the bookshelf, or maybe a newspaper. So I now want to open the door and say, and here's what we're going to be talking about today. Then I look, the next thing, and I'm going to show you these so you actually get to see what I'm doing. The next thing I look at is a light switch that's to the right of the doorway. And I look at that light switch and I say, hit the light switch on. What's the big aha that I want you to walk away with? So the big aha for today's broadcast is anyone can do this, and every family can have some fun in doing it. And then as I look down the wall, there is a socket with a night light in it. So I say, okay, what do I want you to plug into? What is it that I want you to be able to do in the course of doing it? As I look to the right, there's a picture, and I say, and the big picture is, how can this impact your family, and what can you do with it, and having a whole different way of learning and enjoying times and vacations and chores and things in the house. And then last but not least, it's like, hey, let's get into this. So let me give you an assignment. So I'm going to follow those 6 anchors. And for today's lesson, I've decided to just take 6 as we go through this series of workshops on the Roman room. I'm going to build on these lessons, but I'm going to give you a few days to practice and get some comments back on how you've used it, and then take it from there so that it's following all the lessons we've been teaching in the Live with Tony Facebook lessons. So let me take a risk here and see if I can do this nicely. I'm going to turn my laptop around, and I'm going to now show you what my anchors were, and we're going to ask you to do a similar thing within your own residences as part of your assignments. So here's my first anchor. As I was talking to you, I was saying to you, my opening is going to be this doorway. So I look at my opening and say, here's my doorway. Here's what I want to talk about today. And then I'm going to open it so I see through the doorway. So as I see it, I usually leave it ajar. And I say, what am I going to open up as my key topic of conversation for the day? Then, as I said to you, I have a light switch here. So now I'm looking at a light switch. Let me see if I get this light switch on my laptop. Here we go. So there's the light switch. I say, okay, what's the aha I want you to get? Then I look down here, and you should be seeing a socket. So what do I want to get you to plug in on? What am I looking at then for the big picture? Is one of my favorite pictures of trees and pathways and flowers. And gee, I just love that kind of stuff. It brings me into a whole new world. So your big picture is here in terms of your family. And then what I want to get into, and I always think of a fireplace, in the warmth of a fireplace. Now let's get to work. Let's put some logs on the fire, and let's get to be warm and comforting and excited and passionate about something we're going to do. So that's my Roman room. Now, what do I want you to do? Well, take a night this week at dinner. Just one night. Start it off simple. And what I want you to do is with the family members, and we're going to assume for this lesson today, it's a spouse. So it's a mom and a dad, 2 parents, sitting with 2 children, and the children can be of any age, and I'd say usually from 5 years old up. Because one of the skills you want to be able to do is have the child or children be able to close their eyes and see imagery of things, and usually I see 5 years old and above, and it can be 20 years old, it can be 25-year-olds. It's 4 people sitting at a dinner table. And what we're going to do is ask them to remember something in a sequence and in order. Maybe it's the 6 things that each of you want to do on a vacation. Maybe now that the kids are back in school, it's 6 things they learned in history, or 6 things they learned in English, or 6 countries they learned about, or 6 figures of countries and the geography of those countries and the political science of it. But we're going to remember 6 things about something that's important that we want to retain for a longer period of time other than 5 minutes and it goes in one ear and out the other. So what you're going to do is ask each person at the table to pick their favorite room in the house. As I did here, the doorway, the opening of it, the switch, the socket, the picture, and the fireplace. My 6 anchors. So each of you have to come up with 6 anchors. So pick your favorite room. A living room may be one, a dining room, a kitchen. The kids can use their bedroom, a bathroom. So the den. So think of a favorite room each of you have in the house. And to make it a little bit more fun and interactive, it'd be nice to have, well, you can vary this, but my first recommendation is have each person pick a different room in the house as their anchors. So the kids can pick their own bedrooms, the mom can pick the master bedroom, you can pick the living area, the den for dad, maybe it's the kitchen. But each of you pick your own rooms to start this off. A variation on this could be you all pick the same room and see how you compare in terms of your anchors and the stories you create. But right now, let's just pick different rooms. And what you're going to do is each of you at the dinner table now will think of the room you want to create or that you want to use for your anchors. And you'll close your eyes. They'll close their eyes, and we're going to go in a clockwise position. and we're going to see in our minds the icons or the imagery of what those anchors are. So I will close my eyes and I see the door. I see the door a little bit open. I see the light switch. I see the socket. I see the picture, and I see the fireplace. Those are my 6 anchors. So at any moment, if I want to think about what I want to be talking about and stay on track, because sometimes I bounce off a track as spontaneity sometimes hits me, but I have those 6 anchors as my hooks. When we talk about hooks, right, and we want to be able to pull something out, I've now got 6 hooks that I can close my eyes at any point in time, and those hooks are immediately present in my thinking. And those form what we call our anchors to begin associating and linking and connecting things we want to remember, so that when we look at the hook, the association to that hook immediately comes back to mind. So an example was, when I see the door, I think of my opening. So my anchor is the door, and it's my opening that I want to talk about, and what might I refer to from the prior day. So I make up this story about, okay, when I look at the door, what's my opening? Well, I know what my name is and the chairman of the memory championship, etc. But what do I want to talk about? And maybe it's from yesterday, and I kind of make up this little story and I stick it on the door. Now the door opens. Well, now it's my new topic. I've been doing the series on Time Magazine and the science of it. I look at the light switch and I think, okay, what's the major idea I want to get out of this particular article today? And I see that, and I create this story between the light switch and that article. So for an example, in today's broadcast, I was working on schools and what were some of the topics I wanted to cover with schools. So when I look at that light switch, I just pictured a whole bunch of kids running to the light switch, fighting on who's going to get the biggest and the best idea. And so that got me thinking of a bunch of kids running to put on to the light switch. Then when I look down at the socket, I'm saying, okay, what is it that I want you to plug into? And in this case, I'm looking at the socket and I'm thinking about, well, there's a standard electrical socket, which are standard scores. But then there's sometimes we get a short socket and all these different ideas come out, and you can be creative in terms of how we handle it. But it's a safe bubbling of ideas that come out of the socket, especially since it's got a nightlife on it. And then when I looked at the picture, I said, well, the big picture I wanted to get out of today's broadcast is, how do we get schools to recognize that there is a standard and there's a process you can follow in terms of a memory system? And then, of course, when I close down with these in terms of the fireplace and the big picture, it's, okay, what do I want you to leave with and get yourself into in terms of realizing there are memory lessons in our Maximum Memory Mastery workshop, and that I always give out my personal email to say, and if there's something in the lesson you want something more personal about, then just send me an email. And I got several of them this morning, which were just terrific, and now I can respond on an individual basis. So that's how I would use the Roman room to then look at those objects anchored, hook things that I want to discuss during my broadcast, especially when I'm sitting at this bookcase. Now, if I move into, you've seen me in 2 other locations, I need to look about and find different anchors in those rooms, or I could actually close my eyes if you saw me doing that, and I could still keep with these anchors and solidify those and use those all the time. But if I'm just looking up and I'm talking to the screen, it's easier to see anchors within the room that I'm seeing, and they instantly recall something I want to talk about, and that's my preparation. So now you're at dinner, and each of your family members have decided their room, and you're going to ask them to each close their eyes and go clockwise. And again, I'm sitting at 6 o'clock, but in my case, I'm crossing the room. I could look immediately to the left and start going from the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. But when I'm doing a broadcast, I'm trying to look out, so I'm not looking in that sequence. I'm looking in a different. Now, at the dinner table, you can start at 6 o'clock and have the kids start with, so what am I looking at when I look at the object against the wall or something against the wall of my bedroom at 7 o'clock? And what is it that I see next at 8 o'clock? What do I see at 9 o'clock? What do I see at 10 o'clock? So that by time the kids go from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, you now have your 6 anchors that they should be able to define in terms of looking at their room from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. What would be 6 items, objects against the wall? Now, you don't want to put items in the middle of the floor, because if they get moved around, it may screw up their anchoring system and their sequencing, which are important to be able to build a memory system that has sustainability to it. So now what you want to do is have them repeat those, and that's where the fun starts, to have fun. So, mom can start off with, well, here are the anchors that I plan to use for my list of things that we want to remember, and dad can go through his list of 6 things, and the 2 kids can go through their 6 things that they want to anchor. And now you've established your first level of fun, because as to what they pick and how they visualize and how they see that anchor is the first step in what I call having the family share the things that they'll use as their anchoring system, or the foundations of their anchoring system. So having each family member share that part is your first step of fun. And again, I'm only using 6 for the initial lesson so that we get the process down, and over a period of time, we'll expand it from 6. Maybe the next time we'll go to 10 or 12. But we'll get some feedback from you as you've used it, and we'll decide how fast we want to push it. But eventually what we're going to do, so you get the big picture, we're going to create an anchoring system of at least 20. And then we'll decide, okay, I've got these 20 anchors, what do I do with them? And we may increase it from there, depending upon how the school year goes by and what the kids are doing. So now we're sitting at dinner, we've got our 6 anchors. And the next thing we want to do is similar to what I did with the door and the doorway and the socket and the big picture and the fireplace. What are some things you want to remember? Well, if we're just beginning the school year, which might be a good time to do, we might ask the kids to list down what were 6 things that they learned in school today. And we could almost break that out by a history lesson and the science lessons or the English lessons, or 6 kids that they met in school today, or 6 things that they did that they thought were fun in school today. But let's decide for today's first lesson, we're going to pick something that the whole family can work on. And let's start thinking about our next holiday that's coming up. Now that school has started, we're already thinking holidays. But let's think about a holiday that's coming up now from September, and let's plan ahead and think of Halloween. So what are 6 things that we want to agree that we'll all remember as a Halloween? So what we'll do is, as a family, we'll agree on what are the 6 most important things that we want to remember about Halloween. Well, do we want to go out and buy candy? Do we have to get costumes first? Do the kids need to go get a costume? So that's the first item on the list, might be their costume. The second thing may be, what are they going to hold in their hand for their trick-or-treat bags? Or is it a pumpkin, or is it a big bag? So the second thing may be each of them are going to have, what are they going to want to buy in terms of their bags? The third thing may be, do we want to plan on what candies that we want to have that we are going to give out to people not ringing our doorbells and knocking on that? The fourth thing may be, okay, what streets or neighborhoods do we want to go walk around with in terms of the neighborhoods? And do we want to get in the car and go to the best neighborhood for trick-or-treating, or do we want to stay in our local? So the fourth thing may be, what streets do we want to at least think about going to? The fifth thing may be, okay, now that we've done all of our trick-or-treating and we're back home, do we each have favorite candies? And do we have a Snicker bar or a Milky Way or a Skittles? What are some of the favorite candies that each of us have that we want to remember? And the sixth thing might be, do we want to bring any of these extra foods to an organization that's short on food, or give it back to the church community? Or do we want to, what do we want to do with some of the extra foods? So now off we go. We've thought about it. Okay, we got our costume, our bag. We're looking at the costume we're going to go buy. We got to get that done. We got to get our streets we're going to do. We got what candies we're going to buy. And we've got our list of 6 things. And what you're going to do is have each of the family members using their anchors, their 6 anchors. They're going to take the object. The first one is, what costumes do we want to have? And we've all agreed on this list of 6. And we're going to take the costume and we're going to each individually link it to our first anchor. So if our first anchor was a doorknob, okay, we're going to think of the costume and we're going to make up a silly story about the costume and the anchor. So when we see this doorknob, we see our costume of whatever it might be hanging on the door and it's coming to life. And so we make up a silly story about that. And then the next object we look at, it may be a lamp that's on the wall, a lamp, a chandelier, something hanging on the wall that's lighting. And we look at that and we say, okay, now we've got a bag or pumpkin. And so we put the pumpkin on there and we see the pumpkin lighting through the light. And we make up a silly story of a skeleton maybe jumping out of the pumpkin for us. And we're going to do that with each of our 6 objects as we go around the room. And each individual family member will have done this by themselves. And here we go, we're back to the family fun. And in the family fun, it'll be amusing to listen to how Dad made his 6 anchors come to life with the 6 things we wanted to remember about Halloween. It may be Mom that comes up with how she made her stories and created these exaggerated, funny, laughing things. It may be one of the kids that just their creativity in this exercise is amazing. It's worth doing the whole thing just to listen to what the stories are that the kids make up with their costume and their bags and their candies and what streets they want to go to and whatever. And you learn things about the family members and their own thinking that is totally fun, enthusiastic, exciting. And you're sitting at the table doing this, sharing each of your 4 stories, and you're just laughing at them and imagining, where did you come up with that from? Or what made you think of that? And I've done this. We're getting feedback from people doing this already with other things in their Roman rooms, and they're just all loving it. And I want everybody to be able to do that and have a different dinner family experience. And I want to do this at least once a week. Now, I've used the Halloween. We've got some time before we get to Halloween. What might you do for your next exercise or your first immediate exercises? First, you might sit down at dinner this week and at least get everybody to establish their anchors. And then during the week, just talk to them on a spontaneous level and ask each of the family, Mom, Dad, the 2 children, pick up, what are your 6 anchors that you're going to use? So step 1 will be, so what are the 6 anchors? And so everybody should have their anchors and they should be consistent and they should be able to just image those with eyes closed and pop them right off. Then by the end of this week, or we got the weekend, today's Monday, by weekend, I don't know, weekend time, what are the things that we want to do this weekend? Or I would prefer to go to the kids, what are 6 things you learned in school, be it mixing all lessons together, your history lessons, your English lessons, and have them start taking the things they learned in any of their classes. And I, over the course of a week, I would hope each of them for each subject would have 6 things that they wanted to remember about a lesson that they learned in school. And so you could start that with 2 of them on Wednesday and 2 of them on Thursday and 2 of them on Friday. And at the end of the week, you could just ask each of the kids to say, so what were 6 things you learned about history, or 6 things you learned about your English class, or 6 things you learned in science? And watch them make their stories between the anchors and the things that they were learning in school, and just watch now how that will build up through a school year. And why I said to you earlier, we could stretch this to 20 is, my goodness, at the end of a month of school, well, the kids have learned 20 different things that all they need to do is look in at their anchors and watch their performance on their next test or on any of their exams or essays or anything that they're doing by subject, and just watch what the kids are going to be able to do by just picture your kids sitting in a classroom, closing their eyes and knocking out an exam because of the things that they were able to remember by looking at the anchors in their room. This has worked. This is not hocus pocus. This is a skill of learning. It's also a skill of creativity. And if the kids ever have to get up and do an oral recitation or oral conversation on any of their school lessons, all they do is they get up and they just visualize, as I do here, the doorway, the opening, the switch, the socket, the picture in the fireplace, and I walk the room and I talk for 30 minutes. Watch what your kids are able to do. Now, for mom and dad, if you're in a work environment, have some fun with this at work. What are 6 things that you've got to do in a company policy? What are 6 things that you've got to do on your to-do list for getting groceries that you need to pick up at the store or when you're running errands? What are some of the policies that you might, mom is dealing with in her work assignment that she's got to make sure she locks in, and start linking those to your anchors. And so bring some variation to this. The application of this skill is limitless, because are we trying to remember things all day long into a sequence? So you're building a skill of anchors and association and connections. And that skill has an infinite amount of capacity, and we'll build them over a period of time as we get people to use this and come back to us. That's the fun part, how we learn and share and learn and share. And so you've now got your first lesson on having fun with the Roman room and bringing it to the family and having a whole different dinner conversation. And as you begin to apply this, if mom, dad, kids hit any bumps, as I do with every broadcast, I want you to do this work, starting with at least 6 anchors over the next few nights, and then begin adding a couple, agreeing on what the topics are that you want to link it to. And if any of you run into bumps along the way and something didn't work quite the way you expected it to, or you didn't have fun, God, you better have fun with this. This has not failed ever. But having fun with it doesn't click. You know how to reach me. It's Dottino. That's Anthony, A-D-O-D-D, dot on my forehead, T on the end of my nose. I like to play golf at the end of my no, Dottino. That's Anthony.Tino at AOL.com. Please send me a note and let's get on the phone and let's clean it up if you need to. Let's smooth out the bumps, because this is one of the fundamental basic skills that all of our mental athletes use in the memory competition. We've had 21 years of experience in this. This will work. And with the families that we're beginning to bring forward through the Maximum Memory Mastery Workshop, they're having fun with it. And the stories we're hearing, we may want to just write a book just on some of these stories, because they are fun, they are laughable, but more importantly, they are something that is a lifelong skill, that as kids are learning this skill through their grade school years and through their college years, it's a skill we can use for the rest of our life. So give it a go, and looking forward to getting feedback on our first lesson. And what we're going to be doing is a series of workshops. So I'll give this one a couple of days to see what kind of feedback we get on it. And then we'll up this probably later in the week and pick it up for lesson 2 on the Roman room and having fun with the family.